Welcome back to the Crazy House World Championship. This is a round third game between PawnInTraining and the Lone Wolf. And as you can see, they are quite evenly matched, rated slightly above 2,300. And before this match, PawnInTraining is leading head-to-head 19-9. So I don't know if that means PawnInTraining is a slight favorite, even though he's a few points behind on Elo. So the winner in this match will take on Bugzilla in the next round. That will be quite tough. And hopefully they will start playing any minute now. Both players are seated. Welcome to all of you who are watching. Please come with questions and suggestions. And off we go. PawnInTraining choosing d4 and the Lone Wolf choosing a very provocative f5 move. Both players seem to be well prepared. A Lone Wolf offering a pawn, but keeping the pawn here by taking on e6 will allow queen takes f2, so that's not to be recommended. I wonder what white should do here. Developing seems natural. One idea here is if black takes with the queen here, maybe you could invite a trade on c3 and then a possible knight fork on e7 will emerge. I think black prefers to take with the bishop here on f5. After which I think black should be doing quite fine. He has nice activity. Although this guy is a bit passive. And I have to say, black is doing quite okay. Rather than trading on c3 at some point, he just kept the threat. So black decides when to trade. That's one of the reasons the bishops are slightly better than knights in this game. They usually decide when to trade and when not to. So the question is if the f-file is a strength or a weakness. What is white supposed to do here? So I suppose black could start chasing the white queen here. If white takes back, knight at g5. So white prefers to go for the initiative, but black quickly gives up his queen. And I suppose black could have just moved the queen also. Although then white could have taken on c3. So black has an army of light pieces, and look at how well they are positioned to attack the white queen and the king side. Hi there, Zarza. Welcome. So I would say this is very close to winning for black. Black can just keep on attacking the white queen, maybe with the pawn here on f4, because it's taboo. There's a knight fork on h3. Maybe f4 and then push the f pawn, I'm not sure. Meanwhile, where's the white counterplay? I just don't see it. Where is the square for the white queen after pawn f4? I don't know. This seems strong as well. Although maybe not as convincing. But how is pawn f2, pawn f3 here? Should do it, shouldn't it? And here pawn h4, king takes, and then knight e4. And you need to push the g pawn. And that king won't escape. Nice start there for the lone wolf. Good preparation. Let's see what the lone wolf has in store for PawnInTraining. PawnInTraining seems a bit less prepared. Of course, this is main line. Isn't black supposed to play pawn a3 there? Or am I just hallucinating? I think black had a good chance there to seize the initiative, pawn a3. But then again, I could be wrong. Sometimes you don't want to have the king here on the king's side. It's better off in the center. This is a nice centralization. And black figures this pawn. It takes some time to capture. Although I don't quite see what's wrong with taking here. It's certainly a threat now to take on c6, I think. And in this kind of position, white enjoys the extra terrain he has. The black pieces are on the queen side, and that's not where the action will take place. And these two knights protecting each other, they're a bit shaky. If one goes, f4 is hanging. They're just protecting each other. So white probably needs to spend a tempo here. But then bishop e2. Black could go for the white queen. Although queen takes, knight takes, king takes. White gets two pieces. Maybe white should have castled instead of playing rook g1. This seems unclear to me. Not much to do with that queen though. If you check on h5 and take here, white would play bishop f3 and then just so white is ahead on time here, threatening to start putting his light pieces on the board. After bishop at f3, white should be in great shape. So black needs to find a way forward here. Can he get really violent here? Knight takes c3, bishop takes, queen takes e5, pawn takes e5, bishop takes d3, something like that, just to push forward. Because if you don't do anything here as black, you are probably doomed. Or you could take on d3 maybe. Take d3 and then take. That's probably a better move order. Instead of pawn e2 check, take d3. Yeah, never mind. There's also a pawn at c2 idea here for black. But this just doesn't seem right. White could probably take on e2, and he should have enough resources to escape. King looks fairly safe on d2. Or maybe not, by the way. Should he go up? This is a strange position. Maybe up is the way to go. So white has everything under control here, I think. King e2, and white should be fine. Bishop e4. This e5 move doesn't threaten much. And you can probably take here on h7, although maybe it's better just to take it easy. Queen at h3 maybe, threatening mate. This covers f7, which could be important in case of knight h6 at some point, with smothered mate ideas here on g8. Once again, the pawn c2 trick here. So, do you go pawn h6? One has a huge army waiting for him. There's also an under promotion here, but it doesn't do anything, does it? c1 knight. No, I just don't see it. But why did he take on... After this, what is... Is he threatening anything? Yes, he is. He's threatening knight at g6. Nasty threat. So this was forced. Okay. And black simply overstepped the time limit. Let's look at the finish there. The lone wolf wins again. And indeed I was hallucinating. This is maybe not so good. Well, it's certainly playable. But I think castling was a bit premature. Here, bishop at g5 seems to be very good for black. So, and rook g1 simply wasn't good at all. Okay. f6. This was just bad. Bishop takes d3. Okay. I was looking at something like, yeah, bishop takes d3 with the idea to take here. This is good for black. But there are other options. And after this, maybe... And here actually white missed a forced mate with knight at h6. Okay. And black is good here, all of a sudden. And then bad again. And this is... Let's have a look at this. And knight at g6 with a forced mate. Rook here. King takes, knight at g5, and so on. Let's get back to the game. The lone wolf has a slightly surprising 2-0 lead. And this is some sort of theoretical line, I think. PawnInTraining is trying to navigate. And taking c6 twice seems like a natural response, and then you can start chasing the white queen, I think. So what do you do with your extra time here? Do you play knight at h4 maybe? You've sacrificed a pawn for some sort of initiative here. Yeah, you could start massaging the knight on c3 because then the e4 pawn will be hanging. And as you notice, black just leaves the rook on f8. That's standard procedure, because the rook is worth about the same as the bishop in Crazy House. So do you go to e4 or g4 with a knight? You might as well pick up the pawn here on b2. And something like pawn h3 here looks promising, I think. I have a bad feeling about this setup because it's so weak here with pawns and knights in hand for black. But I would probably have started with the pawn instead on h3. The move before. A little check here brings the rook into the defense. But it does look threatening here on the light squares for black. So what is this? Well, black has a very simple idea here. You want to put a diag here and a heavy in the corner, and that's checkmate. But knight here will cover h1. But maybe pawn g2, pick up this rook. So you have two rooks. Or you get rid of the knight. And that's a waste of a bishop, isn't it? Something strange happened there. Some crazy house blindness. And all of a sudden, one idea here could be to take and then knight g4. I'm sure both players have missed things in this position. Threatening pawn g2, taking on. And now you can play bishop g2, take the rook. Then you have everything. You can queen the pawn as well on b1. And it's mate in the corner. So 3-0, the lone wolf. That was a very interesting game. And black is quite okay here. Pawn at d4 is indeed strong. As is castling. Black is doing fine here. And as I mentioned, pawn at h3 seems like the best move. I don't like the white position after pawn at h3, but this is also okay. And knight at f3 is actually a forced mate. Look at that. Black had so many strong moves. And simply taking on g2 here. Yeah, it looks so strong. But instead, this is not as simple. Check on g2, take on g3 apparently. And black is, yeah, just check on g2 and take on c2 with a threat of pawn at g2. And I don't know what black did here in the end. Both players missing chances. Take on h2 here, yeah. Like this. If the king takes, you have knight g4, as I mentioned. And the players are swapping mistakes. And finally, black won. And it seems as if he has won yet another game. What happened here? Seems to be a theoretical line, while going for the black throat immediately in the opening. Look at that. And white is just crashing here. Okay. That was a great preparation, and the lone wolf is leading 4-0. 4-0. Pawn in training, you need to start winning now. Clearly the lone wolf has had the better preparation. And this seems like a fairly equal position. I usually like to get my queen to e2 in these kind of positions. It's so well placed there. Great potential. And I wonder if you should take on c6, yeah, just to get the black position a bit loose. Then take e5, put a bishop on d4. Start working the long diagonal. Surely you should take e5 and put something here, bishops. Pile them up. So maybe just white is just looking to take on g7 with some long-term compensation, but white only has bishops in hand. Well, for instance now, just take e5, put bishops here on the long diagonal. Surely this is compensation. You can put another one and then a pawn on f4. Or you could even play f4 here. I think keeping the bishop on d4 made more sense there. Just build up the pressure. Here, either bishop at c3 or f4. Never mind. White is going after a rook for h8. And you need to be really careful here as black. White can take c6. Maybe this is super good for white. You can probably just take d5. White got a lot of pawns there. And one problem for black, maybe it's even the problem, is that you can't give a knight either, because knight at h6 is made as well. Hi there, Hercules. So what you do here, maybe put a bishop here, try to increase the pressure on the f7 square. I like this idea better. So white could maybe start putting pawns here on c6 and d7, chase a rook. Taking with the queen means f6 is hanging. Maybe you put a pawn here on g5. Pawn g5. Because if you take here, f7 is hanging, and if you take with a rook, f6 is hanging. And now f7 is hanging, so this should be over fairly soon. A very ugly position for black. Maybe it was simpler to take on e8 because queen takes and pawn f7 and rook g8. And why not go after the knight? Because if white gets a knight, there's the additional threat of knight f7, rook h8 mate. For instance, now white on the move would play knight f7. He can play knight f7 and pick up the queen if he likes to. Threatening knight f6 check. Looks like PawnInTraining will get his first win. And there are just so many ways to win this. So just push forward. Oh, he resigned. 4-1, the lone wolf, who only needs 1.5 points more when we are halfway in this match. PawnInTraining trying to mix things up. He's noticed that the lone wolf is better prepared. Did he catch white off guard in this opening, maybe? What happens if you take on b2, pawn a3, bishop goes back, and then bishop b4? This looks good for black already. I don't see how white can defend against this massive pin. White just walked right into this. I don't see why I don't take. Oh, why don't you take on b2? Bishop takes, and okay, so the bishop can hide in the corner now. That's right. That's why I wanted to take earlier, before the pin. Take on b2 and then pawn a3. Never mind. Black is making use of the pin anyway. He's forking on e4, and that's quite a horrible fork, increasing the pressure here on c3. So white needs to sacrifice the queen for a couple of pieces. Can black keep the white king in the center? That's the question. Doesn't quite seem so. There is one idea here. Bishop c6, because if white castles, then you have queen takes d2, knight takes, knight h3, and there's a smothered mate. Maybe bishop c6 was stronger. I'm not sure. The white counterattack is quite strong here, I should say. Not easy at all to play black. Can you go for the double knights here? Take, knight takes, queen takes, and then knight e4. I think so. So after bishop takes, what was this? Now you can just sidestep. You certainly don't want to take d2. This just seems like it's winning for white. The rook is hanging, and it has nowhere to go because of the knight fork on f6. This looks hopeless. Black must be in tears here. What did he do? Pawn in training, just thinking and thinking. Or did he go to the fridge to get a beer? So this is very desperate and nearly not enough. Not nearly enough. Okay. First of all, this is okay for white. And why can't you just play like this instead? I wonder. Okay, so apparently knight b5 is good for white. That was surprising to me. Um, yes, I do have some tattoos. And actually, white is still better here. No, he's not. But it's better to take on c3. And then take. Cool, Hercules. And my suggestion here, because I felt this was my idea. Castles and then take d2. But it seems, yeah, this is probably playable for black. The idea being what he has made after this. So maybe bishop c6 was the best chance, because after this things went downhill very fast. This is the last little straw, and then you hope for knight takes, because this is mate. But white can just play king f1. So, are they still playing? Yes, they are. And this is my ace of spades up my sleeve. Yeah, with a big pinch of salt. Absolutely. Yeah, Motorhead. So what's happening here? Well, black has sacrificed a bit. It does have some compensation on the white squares, but I'm not overwhelmed by his attack. And the whole pawn on g4 thing is not much of a threat. So, because white can take twice, and this seems like a natural response. Just try to take control of some squares here. White gives back a piece for 2 pawns. That's about an even trade. You should probably take with a knight and then the bishop. One problem here is that f5 runs into bishop at e6, and here I would probably take c6 without thinking. Take c6 and put a pawn on f6 maybe? I'm not sure. White needs to start pumping out those pieces on the board. He's in the lead and he needs to put the pieces on the board. And once white gets the chance, he will start putting pawns here around the king, and he has a great lead in material. And white should probably play bishop c3 here and give up a piece. Why didn't he put it on c3 instead? Pointing towards the king side. And Well, you can see for yourself, bishop here would have been much better. I don't see the black attack here. He had a few checks, but nothing more. So g3 is hanging. And maybe you should take g3, king f2, bishop h4. Just pretend you have something. And now the rook is hanging. Why didn't he take the rook instead? Because now the f3 pawn is hanging. This is just bad defense. And I don't see that white is threatening anything, because the knight covers both h6 and the bishop covers f7, which is important, I think. So now maybe just bishop at c4 and pick up the rook. Isn't this good for black? You could even throw in pawn at b4, and if the king takes, you have a5. So, is there anything wrong with taking on f1? Is it better to take with the bishop? Yeah, maybe. I just thought that taking with the rook was threatening more than this. So what do you do here? Pawn e2 maybe? If the bishop takes, maybe you can do some sort of desperado. No. The bishop covers f7. Yeah, but okay. But the bishop is covering f7 and g8. Oh, never mind. Looks like the lone wolf is winning this. White isn't really threatening anything here, so black could just pick up some material. Whenever he likes. But now he's threatening to take on g7, so... But why didn't he... Okay, it was check, was it? Yeah, check. Checkmate. Wow, that was a surprise. A huge win by the lone wolf, 6-1. And let's have a look at this final dramatic game. A very quiet opening here. Black is doing fine. But this piece sacrifice is just too much. Simply bishop at a6 and black has everything under control. And then he gave up another piece, and this is just fine for white. So huge advantage here. I was thinking rook takes c6, and the computer thinks it's okay. Giving up even more material. I don't quite understand why he insisted on keeping his king on the second rank. Going back seems more natural. And here I was thinking on this move instead. Oh, so he wants to take with the queen on g4. But that's just bad. And how is this? This is a disaster. And now you see the difference with the bishop on c3 rather than e3, where white put it. And here queen takes g4 even looks strong. And here, yeah, we all missed the finesse. Knight takes knight at h6, and then fork the hell out of black's queen. Because here black found a nice resource. He just has enough to keep an attack going here. It's quite dangerous actually. Why does the computer want the bishop at e4 instead? I don't understand. Personally, I like bishop at d5 because it covers f7. And here bishop at e5 makes a lot of sense. To fork the hell out of, yeah. I just made it up. But here, that was just bad. And I was asking during the game, why don't you take on h3 here? And the answer is you should. Because here, all of a sudden, black is in the driver's seat. And indeed, rook takes f1 is the top choice. And what were you afraid of here? What was it? Knight at e7. And after this, where was it? Knight at g6. I don't quite understand this. Because you have such great coverage here by the... You need to take f1 first, okay. So is this, yeah, this is actually winning. And this is pretty. You can't take with a knight because of, well, you could play probably rook at h8 and take on g7. So f takes, knight takes, and all hell breaks loose here. and so forth. Okay, that was a nice idea. All right, this was a very surprising match. Great preparation by the lone wolf. And what's happening? Tomorrow, Burp Cow is playing Karagialis, but maybe this is 12 a.m. Is that tonight? Well, I'm too tired anyway. Varsågod, Hercules. You're welcome. And I hope to see everybody soon again, because we have a lot of interesting matches waiting for us when we reach the 4th round of the qualifier. For instance, Morlock facing Sunet or Variant Bunny. Clearcast probably playing Gornek 123. Master 10, Terra 87. Maxilla will take on the Lone Wolf, who we saw win big now. Magwort will play Maple Kev or Blitzer 88. A lot of great matches ahead. I feel a bit like playing myself. Should I? Let's see. Do not cry me, River. He's from Russia. I should make him cry a river. Never mind. I think I'll call it quits. Thank you for watching and see you again soon.